This was a book I didn't expect to like. Um, Having seen the trailer for the movie, it looked like minimalism, and I was like, the book probably isn't going to be very good. However, it was on sale on Audible during one of their 2-for-1 sales, so I figured I might as well pick it up. It wasn't very long. I think it was only, let me just look at my phone. I think it was only 6 hours or so. It was a very, yeah, 6 hours and 40 minutes. And I listen at like 1.3, 1.5 speed. So it didn't take very long to get through, just a couple days with my commute. And when I was listening to it, I found I really enjoyed it actually. And I was kind of surprised because I liked it. I think kind of more minimalist, existentialist kind of things like this work a lot better in book form than in movie form. Because really, like, the advantage of books over film is in books they describe what the person is thinking or how they feel. Books are in a lot of ways more objective in movies because in movies you don't really understand what gestures mean, but in books it'll be like the man lay on the ground in desperation, as opposed to in a movie you just see someone lie down. So that's what I think is kind of the fundamentally better part of books than movies. Movies are visual mediums, and not everything adapts well into a visual medium. Now, I will admit I haven't actually seen the movie, nor do I have a particular desire to see the movie. But just from reading the book, I don't think it's really something that should be adapted. So, The Road gives us a post apocalyptic America, and it's kind of very different from what most post apocalyptic stories are. Because most post apocalyptic stories have some hope to them, that in some part of the world, some small bit of humanity will survive, and it might take tens of thousands of years, but will eventually repopulate the Earth. Or even that it's the end of humanity as we know it, but at least life still exists, and maybe someday another intelligent species will evolve on the planet, and things in history will kind of restart itself. The Road, however, says no, this isn't going to happen. This is the end. The disaster which occurred, which in my view is very strongly implied to be a nuclear winter, a nuclear war, has killed all the plants on Earth and all the animals on Earth. All that's left is humans, and humans, as evidenced by the man, are all have cancer. And even if they manage to find enough food to continue, their clocks will eventually run out. People aren't capable of growing things anymore. Most of the water is irradiated, and all the plants are gradually falling apart. All the trees have died, etc. They can sometimes find a couple plants that are left, but by and large, it's implied that everything is dead. Um, and people are left to pick through the remains of civilization for whatever they can find, particularly canned goods or dried food or packets. They find like a packet of Great Mix at one point. And people are just down to, after about a decade since the nuclear war, most of the cities have been picked clean. The things that weren't burned or irradiated beyond being able to be consumed. So there's no hope. It's implied that pretty much the whole world is dead at this point, and the plants will just continue to fall apart. What's left of humanity will basically just scavenge until they either die of cancer or they eat each other. And it's just another one of those things that even after humanity has been reduced to basically non existence, we're still killing each other and still preying on each other. So what's left of humanity is kind of divided into two groups. One group lives in communes or in tribes, and they basically hunt people who are outside of the tribes and they use them as food. At one point in the movie, they find them eating a baby. In another part of the movie, in the book, not the movie, they find a house where there's dozens of people locked up in a basement, and the cannibals have been cutting off their limbs one after another and eating them, and then burning the stumps to prevent them from bleeding out. And the other half of humanity just wanders around trying to find enough food to survive. but increasingly picking the land barren. And as people come across one another, they take shots and try to kill each other to get the remaining food for survival. So a lot of people, after kind of trying to exist in this new world for a while, just give up. The man's wife, because there's the wife, the woman, the man, and the boy. The man's wife gives up in a flashback and basically doesn't want to live anymore in a world where civilization's gone, in a world where everyone will eventually die of starvation. She views her own death as being preferable to trying to exist. And the man begs her to stay, not because he values life anymore, but because they have to stay alive for the boy and try to keep him alive as long as possible. But the book asks the question, what's even the point? Because everyone's going to die eventually anyways. And it's true in real life, everybody dies. As what's his name says in Blade Runner, it's too bad she won't live, but then again, who does? But normally there's some form of future. It's like in Children of Men. Everyone's going to die anyways. The issue is that there's no future without children. And there's no future in this world because there's no chance for humanity to restart itself. It seems like everything is going to die, not just humanity, but the oceans are dead, the plants are dead, the animals are dead. Maybe on some islands in the middle of nowhere, there's seeds left, and when the radiation goes away, it'll restart the environment. But the book really gives the impression that nope, this is the end. So what's even the point of keeping going? Largely because the man just has nothing else left, and he carries with him 2 bullets, one for himself and one for the boy. And this may seem very cold, but he believes that shooting the boy in the head is preferable to having the cannibals rape and eat him slowly, which is probably true in my humble opinion. I know I'm supposed to be against euthanasia as a Catholic, but I can't fault the man for preferring to kill his son outright than having cannibals eat him alive. So that's basically it. And the book is them kind of wandering from place to place, being exhausted, filthy, trying to find enough water and food to survive. And when we get to the end of the journey, the man gets shot in the leg with an arrow, and his illness catches up with him and he dies. And the boy finds apparently a pleasant family who assures him that they're they're the good guys. And it looks like everything's going to be okay. The boy's going to go off with them, but you don't know, is that group are they cannibals too? How are they so well fed, and how do they have a dog in a world in which most people are emaciated? Is the whole thing a dream? Is the boy himself dying, and this is just kind of his mind just kind of understanding the transition to heaven? We don't really know. The book, I would say, is very kind of postmodern in that, at least in my view, it's not necessarily trying to say anything beyond what it says. It's very existentialist. It's very about is there meaning in life, but ultimately, its core theme seems to be that everything dies, and that ultimately there's not really purpose in life other than what people make. And that to a large extent making purpose is dependent on other people, because the man can't live just for himself, and the woman can't live without civilization and a broader identity to kind of put herself into. And to me, what's always been the most horrifying part of an apocalypse is not really the loss of human life, but the loss of memory. That kind of in the moment we have books, we can look back in time, and we can see we can see kind of the progress of human history from our beginning to the present, and we are very much a product. Our culture today is a product of like thousands and thousands of years of individual decisions of the past, of what our ancestors did, and in the post-apocalypse we forget about all that. We lose basically all the organic social development we've had in human history. And I don't necessarily mean that social development is a good or a bad thing, but it is what makes us human. We have our biology, which is inherited from nature and our ancestors, but we also have the beliefs, the dreams, the wishes of our ancestors. And the boy, they don't even really know it's America anymore. The boy and the next generation, if there is one, won't know anything about the past. They might have a few kind of memories they get from the older generation, but in time that'll fade away. There'll be no one left to keep the fire, as the book says. It is just basically the end of the world. It's the end of all things. And to a certain extent, I think it's worse to have the majority of humanity survive an apocalypse, but lose all concept of memory and lose all of the past, than a majority of humanity to die, but to maintain its traditions and to maintain where it came from and its identity. Ultimately, I think that's kind of something that post-apocalyptic literature should kind of deal more with, is the question of survival versus identity. Can humanity have a purpose in a world without civilization, in a world without culture? Is life still meaningful if you don't even have the tribe anymore, but you've basically lost everything? And I think to a certain extent that's what War for the Planet of the Apes and the Apes movies in general try to deal with. And to a certain extent, it's kind of why you sympathize with the apes. Because the apes understand this. They're trying to preserve and build their own culture, their own civilization, at a time where humanity is rapidly losing all memory of its past. The apes kind of try to keep it precious, to kind of keep the fire going. And this is kind of in contrast to another movie that's very similar called The Book of Eli, which the main character is carrying a copy of the Bible, and his whole goal is to get it to a group of people who are trying to preserve the past. And in that movie, Gary Oldman really, really wants to get the Bible because he understands how powerful collective identity is. He understands how powerful culture is, and that it's the only way to rebuild a civilization, which is what his ultimate goal is. So, am I really kind of analyzing The Road? I guess I'm kind of more talking about it in contrast to maybe post-apocalyptic fiction in general and how I view it. Sorry if this one was kind of a bit more meandering and incoherent compared to some reactionary reviews, but I kind of wanted to talk about it, but it's because of how stripped down and kind of minimalist the plot is. It's hard to say too much about specifically what happens in the book. Anyways, though, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you guys later.